Einhaus with us. He is going to give us the latest and greatest on the transfer tool. Carl?
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Everyone, my name is Carl Einhaus, and I'm the Chief Student Success and Academic Affairs Officer here at the department. And I work with my team that works with everything student affairs and academic affairs with all the institutions. So it's a pleasure to be here to provide some updates on what's going on with a transfer tool that we recently created and we have active online. And we definitely want to get the word out on it because it's a really great resource. And so I'm going to drop a link to where it exists. But before I begin, I think it's really important to begin from the beginning in that our state is very fortunate to have a statewide agreement system for a transfer. And it encompasses many different things, but specifically, there's something called guaranteed transfer pathways, which enables a student to take a gen ed course at one state institution and transfer it to another state institution. So let's say they start at Arapahoe Community College and they want to transfer to Mesa. That course, if it's part of the GT pathway system, will be guaranteed to transfer over. There's also something called statewide articulation agreements. And these are sometimes referred to as 2+2 agreements. Essentially, what it enables students who participate in one of those articulation agreements is that at a community college, they can earn an associate's degree, and many are in specific subject areas like psychology or business. And it is guaranteed that 60 of those credit hours will transfer over to a four-year institution, state institution, and they'll begin junior status and only have to take an additional 60 credit hours. Of course, there's always a few exceptions, and they are listed clearly on the transfer agreements, but for the most part, that's how it works. And so up until now, a lot of this information has been on PDFs and also on our website. And while the information was provided, it sometimes is difficult for anyone who's interested in transfer, whether it be a student or a high school counselor that's advising concurrent enrollment students, or a college advisor that's advising their student who they know wants to transfer. Sometimes it can be very difficult to kind of navigate through all that information and slow. And so we've known this for many years, and we've really wanted to have a tool that we've created for many, many, many years. I've worked here for over 10 years, and I know that since I began working here, we wanted something like this. But of course, it's always about funding. And we had legislation that passed a couple sessions ago, and we're also able to get a state grant to create this product. And so I'm plopping the link into the website right now, but I'm going to share my screen so you can go along on your own if you want to. But I'm going to show you exactly how I got here and then what this tool can do. And I know a lot of, whenever there's a presentation on an online tool, it's really difficult to follow along. So really, what I really encourage you to do, if you haven't already, is just to play around with this tool to see what it can do and what the information is like and that sort of thing. And so when you go to our main page, you'll see that there is a link with Colorado Transfer, and that will bring you directly to this tool. And when you scroll down, you'll see that there's some credit support that if you have no idea what exactly you're looking for, you can click onto that. And it has this guiding tool that will assist whoever is on this site on getting to where they want to go. So let's say I'm someone who is interested in exploring associate's degrees and transfers. If you click on that, it will bring you directly to the statewide articulation agreements. If you just want to explore exam credit, you can select what kind of exam you're interested in. I'll select AP. And it will bring you to where the AP Advanced Placement exam information is. And so I'm going to back up a little bit. Included in statewide articulation agreements, we have many credit for prior learning exams like AP and IB and CLEP that are included in the statewide articulation agreements. And they are specific to the GT pathways. So in other words, and I'm going to use AP as an example, let's say if you take an AP exam in English composition, it will tell you what score you need in order to get college course credit by each state institution. And it will tell you what course credit you will get based upon that course number, or based upon that score. So now here's an example of the tool already, which is something that we did not have before, where an individual can look up an AP exam and see what score they need on it, at what institution, and what course credit they can get based upon that score. And so really, really slick tool there. And there you can see that there's a lot of filtering mechanisms that we have. So if you know you want AP Calculus, you can click on that as a filter, and it will pop up all the calculus courses. If there's a specific institution that you're interested in, maybe you're not interested in all of them, you can just collect that institution, and that information will come up as well. And then same thing with categories. And these are GT pathway categories. GT pathways are divided into subject areas, including arts and expression, literature and humanities, ways of thinking, world languages, and so on. And so there's a number of credit hours that need to be fulfilled to satisfy each area. And so you can filter, let's say if you're just interested in literature and humanities, you probably want to get rid of that filter of the exam. It will tell you all of the different AP exams that exist, which you get college course credit that would fulfill that GT pathway area. So I'm going to go back. I'm going back. So a lot of people, when they get to this website or web page, they'll see these 4 different options. And for the most part, many individuals will be looking at this guaranteed transfer or GT pathways category, as well as the transfer degrees. And if you select on GT pathways, this page pops up. And it has information about what GT pathways are and what some of the conditions. For example, in order for the course to transfer over to another institution, the student needs to earn at least a C- or higher. And there's some other conditions that exist here too, like the course can't be older than 10 years old and that sort of thing. And if you scroll down further, you'll see all the different categories that exist under GT Pathways. So if you're not familiar with what GT Pathways means, this is a great information resource, which has a description of all the different categories that exist within GT Pathways, like written communication, mathematics, and natural and physical sciences, and then the credit course requirement that is needed. And then you can click on these hyperlinks over here, and it will pull up a list, a comprehensive list of all of the courses that exist that fulfill that area in GT Pathways, what those courses are and where they exist. So this can be very helpful for students that are looking to transfer. And also, what we're hoping will be also very helpful for students who are in high school and they're looking to take college course credit. And maybe they don't know what major they want to go into, but they know they want to go into like a liberal arts major. So a really great recommendation for them would be to take a GT Pathway course because it'll most likely apply to their future program of study, even if they don't know what they want to study quite yet. So this is a really great resource for them as well. So I'm going to back up. And if you scroll down further, it will actually bring you to that pop-up, which I showed you before, which gives you the ability to search on all things GT Pathways throughout the state. And again, you can filter however you want to, or you don't have to at all. So if you know you want to, or you know you want a mathematics course, You can filter by all the math courses that exist, and it will pop up all the different math courses that exist at all the institutions. And again, if you just want to do it at a certain community college, you can do it by the whole Colorado Community College system. So all 13 different colleges would pop up there and the search results. Or if you know that you just want Colorado School of Mines, well, that's not going to be a good example because they don't have a lot of GT pathways, but let's say Colorado State University, it will pop up all of the courses that exist under the math area of GT pathways. So again, I'm not gonna go too much further with this because I know how difficult it is to follow along in a presentation for an online webpage. But definitely play around with this tool yourself to see what exists and what kind of information is provided on this page. It's really slick. And then the other thing I really want to quickly show you is the transfer degrees webpage. Similar concept, has information about what transfer degrees. They're basically 60 plus 60 for Associate of Arts and Associate of Science degrees. I think it's really important to know that these statewide transfer agreements are mainly or almost all for academic programs. So if a student is taking an Associate Applied Science at a community college, let's say, or a career technical education certificate, they do not participate in these statewide articulation agreements. Now, some of these programs do have GT pathway courses in their curriculum, but they are not, they do not participate in these statewide articulation agreements. And so I'm going to click down here so you can see a list of all the different transfer agreements that exist. And let's say I'm a student and I'm beginning at Arapahoe Community College and I want to pursue computer science. I can click on the computer science link, and what will pop up is the statewide articulation agreement for computer science, and it has all the information that exists about that agreement, and it will tell you the participating institutions in that particular agreement, and then it gives you the curriculum. So it basically tells you exactly what courses should be taken to fulfill that curriculum in computer science, that degree with designation, as they're also called. And so students can use this as a means to kind of, as like a checkbox to say, okay, yep, I've taken this class, I've taken this written communication class, I've taken this history class, all I have to do now is these natural and physical science courses, and I've completed my degree with designation in computer science. So this is a great resource as well. I think it's really important to know that there are a couple of different exceptions. There's a couple of different pre-engineering transfer agreements. Engineering is kind of a special beast. School of Mines does not participate in GT pathways because they're a very specific engineering institution and they're not very liberal artsy. They're very math heavy, of course, and engineering specific. They don't, while they do have some GT pathway courses that they offer, except they do not participate fully in the statewide GT pathway agreements. But there are specific agreements that exist between institutions like School of Mines and the community colleges. So if a student's starting at a community college, they know they want to transfer to Mines, there are transfer agreements that exist for them so they can begin taking courses at the community college and then transfer seamlessly into Mines. And then nursing is also an exception. They're very specific to that medical health profession. And so we have specific information for nursing that exists on here as well in terms of what courses you should take to fulfill those agreements. So that is the tool as it exists right now. There's also information about Colorado Reverse Transfer, which provides the ability for a student that started at a community college. They earned at least 15 credit hours, and they transferred to a 4-year public institution here in Colorado and earned at least 70 credit hours, but has not earned a credential yet. They could transfer that work back from the 4-year to the 2-year institution they started at, and the 2-year institution can review that coursework to see if they're eligible for an associate's degree. So that's a program that we've been doing for, I think, about 8 or 9 years, probably actually over 10 years now. And then there's a transfer directory, which, if you click on here, has hyperlinks to all of the state institutions here in Colorado that will bring you to the web page in regards to the transfer information. So that is a good resource as well. One of the things that we want to do in the future, you might know that a lot of institutions have a transfer equivalency system. So let's say I'm interested in going to UNC and I want to see if the courses that I'm taking at, let's say, Ames Community College will transfer over to UNC. UNC has a transfer equivalency system where someone can just plug in the courses that they're taking and they'll tell you how and if it will apply to certain programs of study that they offer at UNC. Well, what we would like to do is take that a step further and make a statewide platform so that a student could enter in a course they're taking at any state institution here in Colorado. And it will tell you how and if it will apply to different programs of study at all of the state institutions here in Colorado. So that way, the individual doesn't have to go to each individual institution site to see how a course is going to transfer. They can just go to this one tool and it will tell them how and if it will apply to different programs of study across the state. And this, I think, will be a great benefit to the student. So they can, I think maybe an accurate term, and maybe not favorable, but they can shop around. They can say, hey, I've taken these courses at Arapahoe, and I see that maybe UNC is taking a whole lot more of my credits toward this program I want to pursue. So it'll be less time to completion to earn my credential at UNC. So I'm going to go there. And so this could be a benefit to institutions as well, because maybe a student would not have considered an institution before, but if they see that they're taking all these college course credits toward a program that they want, they're going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to go there. It's going to be a whole lot easier for me to complete my credential there. So that's something we're working toward. We don't have that right now, but that's something that we're aiming toward having in the future. And so we're working on funding to be able to build that tool out. And hopefully within the next couple of years, we'll have something up and running that will be basically that tool. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to see if there's any questions that you all might have.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, feel free to put your questions in the chat or come off mute. I just think it's a wonderful resource. Thanks so much for telling us about it.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I said, definitely play around with it if you haven't already.
For sure. You're welcome to join us, or you can hop off. We're just going to do some FAFSA and CASFA updates now.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to hop off, but I greatly appreciate being here. Thanks
I
for
had
the
a quick
invite.
question for,
Oh,
Yeah, please.
sorry, I had a quick question for Carl. Thank you so much for this. This is amazing. I think most of my students are either coming in with transfer credits or looking to transfer out. Eventually, I'm at Colorado Mountain College. I had a question on, this is higher ed. Is it basically at the bachelor level, or can you also run agreements with, you know, postgraduate master's programs?
Oh, that's a great question. Right now, all of our agreements are associates to bachelor's degrees.
Mhm.
And there we really don't have very much, and this is statute based, by the way. So a
Sure.
lot of the work that we do is based upon statute. We're given direction of what to do. And so right now, there's not very much in statute surrounding graduate programs. They're very individualized within a program and also institutions. So, and they all have different kind of admissions criteria too. So we don't have anything in existence right now that's specific to graduate programs. There are some institution-specific kind of agreements that exist that will have a bridge between bachelor's to graduate programs, but nothing statewide at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for all
my
the work.
pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
any other questions?
Okay, great. Well, if you do have any questions, of course, feel free to reach out. And thank you very much for your time and listening to me. Have a great meeting.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Carl.
Bye-bye.
Hopefully everyone can stay on. We'll give you some quick FAFSA and CASFA updates and try to answer any questions that you may have about those applications. I'm just going to share my screen here real quick with you to provide the FAFSA updates. First up, did want to mention that there have been over actually now that since I've pulled this information, there have been over 2 million FAFSA submissions. 23,000 of those, as you can see here, have been submitted by students from the foster care system. 15,000 submitted by active duty military, 36,000 from veterans. There's 21,000 submitted by students with children of their own, and 124,000 users have successfully submitted a correction, which is great news. That means that they're checking their portal and going in there and able to make those corrections. Now, the reason that a lot of these numbers are up now are because of the updates that have actually been implemented since September 24th, which was the date that the FAFSA form was released. Some of those updates are the ability to print the FAFSA submission summary. This seems, I mean, like a no-brainer, but institutions can now do that so that financial aid administrators can share that full record with students. There's a new ICER comparison feature, and so if you are in an FPP user, you can now compare multiple ICERs. So if a student has more than one, you can compare multiples to determine which processed FAFSA information to use. For awarding. You have the ability for states to request ICERs by social security numbers, and the updated application receipt timestamp has been changed to Central Time Zone now. And this will allow for institutions and states to determine if the student did indeed submit the FAFSA on time before the deadline. There's a year-to-date completion file for states. And so this file will help identify high school students who have submitted a FAFSA form. There's improved identity matching for paper applications. And what this means is they're using that fuzzy matching with the paper applications now to match them with any FSA IDs that have been created. That way, if the student did fill out a paper FAFSA but does need corrections, they can log into the portal and make those corrections. The social security number is now displayed in account settings. This again is like a great option because if the student is not being verified, chances are they maybe messed up on something, a number in their social security number. They can now go into their settings and see the entire number so that they can get that match going. And the Authenticator app is now available as a recovery option. Students also have 9 attempts when they forget their password now and changing the password is a little bit easier. There was also a bug that if the address was invalid that the student entered, it wasn't allowing them to progress with the FAFSA form. That bug has now been fixed. It's, that whole matching thing was with the 24 FAFSA and it just wasn't working. So now they have loosened up those requirements. Those are just a few of the updates that have been made since like I said, September 24th. But I will stop sharing now and pass it over to Sophie for our CASFA updates.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jen. Let me share my screen, go through a quick presentation about CASFA. How are we looking? Okay.
Not up yet.
Okay.
I don't think, not for me yet. Okay, there you go.
Thank you. My computer has been slow today. So the CASFA did transition to a new vendor. Our new vendor is Nelnet. They're our software developer. So there's a QR code in the URL. We've updated the URL on CDHE's website, and we have a redirect from our old vendor's website to this website. So you should be able to locate the CASFA. Information about the CASFA, that's an acronym we made up here in Colorado. It stands for the Colorado Application for State Financial Aid. CASFA is for students who are not eligible for federal student aid, undocumented students, or students from mixed immigration status families or other situations who prefer not to share their contributors' personal data beyond Colorado higher education institutions. Students who complete a CASFA are applying for state and institutional aid only and not federal student aid. So that again is QR code to take you to the CASFA form. A little more information about the difference between CASFA and FAFSA. So students who use CASFA should agree with these statements. They should say, I am not a US citizen or eligible non-citizen. I qualify as a Colorado asset student because I have attended a Colorado high school for at least 1 year immediately before graduation or completed a high school equivalency examination in Colorado. And I have continuous and physical presence in Colorado for 12 months before the start of the semester. Students who use CASFA agree with the statement, I should complete a CASFA if I have financial need, regardless of my Colorado asset eligibility. Students who use CASFA should agree with these statements. I have DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or TPS, which is Temporary Protected Status. Those are two specific immigration statuses, those that are not eligible for federal student aid, so they should complete a CASFA. In addition, students who use CASFA agree with these statements. I am eligible for federal student aid, but am from a mixed immigration status family or other situation, and I prefer not to share my contributors' personal data beyond Colorado higher education institutions. So I know this is a lot of information, especially if you're not familiar with it. I am familiar with it, which is why I go so fast. When we're talking to students, please try to be as sensitive as you can with the fact that CASFA is a new acronym, Colorado Asset is a new acronym. If you're throwing both at them at once, I recommend trying to write it down and give them a minute to understand the acronyms. So Colorado Asset is about getting state, being charged Colorado resident tuition and being eligible for state-funded financial aid, right? Colorado asset eligibility. If someone is Colorado asset eligible, great. They should do a CASFA. If they are not Colorado asset eligible, they should still do a CASFA. For clarification, federal student aid they are the ones who determine who is considered an eligible non-citizen. That information is available via the QR code and also the website. You can search FAFSA eligible non-citizen and it'll come right up. There are a lot of immigration statuses that are very clearly marked. So those students who are eligible non-citizens, they can complete a FAFSA. So here's a resource about how to best advise undocumented parents on filling out a financial aid application via the QR code. The link is there as well. This is a great resource from the, President's Alliance on Higher Education and Immigration. They recommend following these 5 messaging points. First messaging point, if your student was born in Colorado and is a US citizen, that student is eligible for federal student aid. So reassure students they are eligible. Listen to and address safety concerns. So if a student says, I am concerned about completing a FAFSA for these reasons, listening to them and making sure you're doing active listening is an important step. Step 3, respect privacy and avoid directly asking about immigration status. For clarification, best practice is to never ask directly about immigration status. Point 4, answer questions and consult experts when appropriate. Some experts you might want to consult would potentially be somebody at the financial aid office. That would be an expert that you might want to consult with another expert could potentially be an immigration attorney, depending on the family and the situation. If they have questions that you can't answer and the financial aid office can't answer, those might be questions for an immigration attorney. And then talk through the pros and cons of completing a CASFA and not a FAFSA. So if a student was born in Colorado and their parents are immigrants who don't have documentation, those students could choose to complete a CASFA and not a FAFSA. There are pros and cons. Cons of completing a CASFA and not a FAFSA is automatically forfeiting up to $7,395 of financial aid through the Pell Grant, right? So that is one con of not completing a FAFSA. I spoke to someone at CSU Fort Collins at the end of 2024, and they thought that would be the deciding factor for many of her students. She thought that they all needed federal Pell Grants in order to go to college, and they would not be going to CSU Fort Collins without that Pell Grant. However, if that is not the case, right? If some students need to consider alternative options, the pros of completing a CASFA is you could be eligible for state aid, right? Especially if you're a Colorado asset eligible student. That means that you could be considered for state funded financial aid that could help. And there also could be institutional aid that could be awarded to you from, CMC if you go to Colorado Mountain College, from Arapahoe Community College, from any of your colleges. There's always institutional aid. Another pro of completing a CASFA is that information that's provided is going to stay in the state of Colorado. That information is not going to leave the state of Colorado. There are more pros and cons. It's a complicated conversation. I do want to point out, I highly recommend encouraging students and families, especially families, to be honest. If there's mixed immigration status family, it's actually the parents who are really holding the bulk of this burden. Encouraging parents to make sure they make the decision on their own instead of you as a professional telling them what to do. For many, many reasons, especially because the parents need to know how to respond appropriately. A few other pieces really quick I want to add about this is if the student has older siblings and the parents have already completed a FAFSA for older siblings, it is much less likely that they would want to do a CASFA instead of a FAFSA because that information is already out there. In addition, if the parents have ITINs, which are individualized taxpayer identification numbers, they already have that information, then it is, again, less likely those families are going to forfeit the potentially $7,395 of federal Pell Grant to just complete a CASFA. Again, an important complex conversation. I really encourage you to advocate and cultivate agency and allow your families to make the decisions for themselves, especially because they're the ones who will benefit from the benefits or deal with the consequences. Next slide is a little more information. So a CASFA can be completed by any student who isn't completing a FAFSA. So I want to make sure you all know about CASFA data security. There's the URL and the QR code about how CASFA data stays within the state of Colorado. It is shared directly with our financial aid offices at our public colleges and universities at the request of the student, and doesn't go anywhere else. And another important piece about CASFA is, so CASFA students who graduate from college can be successfully employed as independent contractors. A year ago, those students were applying for ITINs, and then as independent contractors, using the skills that they earned in college, they were working and enjoying successful employment. Few other pieces, just very specific about the 26-27 CASFA, what is needed. So students create a CASFA account using their personal email address, and then parents will need to wait until students invite them. For the 26-27 CASFA and also FAFSA, please make sure you all remember that you're using 2024 federal income taxes. Those are considered prior. That's the language that the U.S. Department of Education came up with, but as you can see, 2024 is 2 years before 2026. So maybe that's the math that works for my little brain. Please encourage students and their contributors to attend FAFSA CASFA nights, to attend financial aid nights, host those inclusive events at your high schools, at your organizations, so that you are clearly communicating inclusive messaging about who should be pursuing financial aid and attending post-secondary institutions. And then also encouraging people to attend those will help them understand how many people are applying for financial aid and how beneficial it is. The 26-27 CASFA, so that's for students who are current 12th graders who will be going to graduating in May and going to college and university next year. They are CASFA opened October 1st, so a month and a half ago. Additionally, I always like to do this at the end, college affordability messaging. So everybody should complete one financial aid application per aid year. So students should not complete a FAFSA and a CASFA. They should just complete one per aid year. And then, once for one application for their first year of college, one application for their second, one application for their third, one application for their fourth, obviously. So if any of your students don't want to pay full, so that's like sticker price for college, they should apply for financial aid, period. So students who aren't income eligible for a federal Pell Grant could receive state or institutional aid. I always like to say this because I've worked with high school students who say to me, oh, I'm not going to get anything. My mom told me not to do that because I'm not going to get anything. And I think the messaging is actually the parent doesn't think they're going to be eligible for a federal Pell Grant. And that sounds fine, and perhaps the parent is right. However, if they're not income eligible for a federal Pell Grant, but they still would like assistance paying for college, they should apply for state aid or institutional aid, and that is through a financial aid application. All right. There's some contact information. You're welcome to reach out. And then does anyone have any questions? I'm going to stop sharing so that if you have any additional questions that I didn't address, I'd be happy to talk about them now. You can come off mute, you can put them in the chat, whatever is the best communication method for you.
Could be any questions either, if there are any questions at all. Great. I'm going to just real quick give you some upcoming events that we have. Of course, we do have the monthly Lunch and Learns. Our next Lunch and Learn, believe it or not, will be December 10th. It's a little earlier in the month, so hopefully you can join us before all your festivities take place. If you'd like to register for the Lunch and Learn, the QR code will take you there. And if you do miss December, you could always join us January 14th. Also, if you have any events coming up, or if your staff needs trainings, anything that we could assist with as far as FAFSA and CASFA goes, please feel free to fill out our CDHE event request form. The QR code there will take you to that form. You can fill it out and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Please know that our outreach team is kind of small these days. It's pretty much Sophie and I. So if we can't make it to your event, we really apologize, but please still fill out the form and we will see what we can do. Definitely. All right. Sophie, did you want to go through some of the questions that were sent in?
I covered them in my presentation.
Oh, you
So
did.
we're
Okay.
golden. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, then we are finishing up then a little bit ahead of time, but if you have questions, we're happy to stay on. Otherwise, we'll give you back some time, and we again thank you for joining us during your lunch hour. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. to stop the recording.